Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Herewith, they gave the premiere and made recordings. And today we're talking about a really, really juicy one. I mean, they're all really juicy. Let's not kid ourselves. We're talking about freakish masterpieces played by the most amazing artists. I mean, but this one is like up there, even for that. It's David Oistrakh playing the Shostakovich First Violin Concerto, which was written for him, which he worked on with Shostakovich, on the violin part anyway, apparently, because everyone needs help writing violin parts. Here's a secret about composers who write violin concertos, even composers who are violinists. They always need help with a violin part. And the reason is because violinists have very personal habits. They use their own fingerings and they have lots of suggestions about how you hold and stroke and bow and attack your violin. And throughout most of musical history, violin concertos were written by violinists for their own use, and no one else would play them or could play them. I mean, they would keep them and hide them. I mean, Paganini did that. I mean, everybody did that. Vieuxtemps and all those great 19th century violin virtuosi, and going into the 20th century too. So when composers actually decided to write violin concertos, usually it was with a specific violinist in mind, and they took advice from that violinist. And Shostakovich did that with David Oistrakh. Anyway, the violin concerto was premiered in 1955, even though it was written several years earlier and shoved in a desk drawer because Shostakovich did not want to release it when he was under sanction, as he was in 1948, because of Stalin and the things and the stuff, and what happened. So Stalin dies in 1953, and all of this Shostakovich stuff that he'd been sitting on pops out, including the violin concerto. And it was premiered in 1955 under Yevgeny Mravinsky, but then Oistrakh took it on tour and played it that same year in New York under Dmitri Mitropoulos with the New York Philharmonic, and recorded it with Dmitri Mitropoulos of the New York Philharmonic, an album that was released in 1956. It's in mono. It is unspeakably thrilling. It's a glorious, amazing performance of this glorious and amazing concerto. Really incredible. And Oistrakh made several more recordings of the work as well. He made one with Maxim Shostakovich for EMI/Warner/Melodia/whatever it was. And there are also some Melodia recordings with him circulating around. But this is a really serious case of he gave the premiere and made the first recording all at the same time. And, we talk about the classical canon being like all old stuff and dead stuff and whatnot. What could have been more alive? Shostakovich was alive and going like gangbusters. The work was acknowledged as a masterpiece virtually from day one. It immediately entered the repertoire of violinists everywhere. I mean, really, doesn't that make you feel good? Isn't that just a wonderful thing about the classical music culture, the supposedly hermetically sealed classical music culture? Well, it's not so hermetic and not so sealed after all, is it? Because there is no greater 20th century violin concerto than this one. You could argue that there is no greater violin concerto than this one, in the sense that once you reach a certain level of, supreme being, comparisons become pointless. It's a universally acknowledged great work. And Oistrakh's performances are great performances of it. Shostakovich had the singular advantage of working throughout his career with the best artists and being able to write for them. And he also wrote his second violin concerto for Oistrakh. Now, the second violin concerto is a much tougher nut than the first violin concerto. It's a more difficult work and a less immediately alluring work than the first concerto. It's also a very fine piece. It's a very, very good concerto, but it's never going to have the kind of popularity as the first. And it seems that when composers write multiple works of that type, violin concertos particularly, piano concertos too, and one of them is like hugely popular, the others never can be, even if they're very good. I always thought it was a pity that Prokofiev's third piano concerto was so popular when everyone knows his really coolest one is the second. For example, Beethoven's Emperor Concerto has overtaken the fourth, which doesn't have a title, and which, for my money, is like the greater work of the two. But you know, that's all a matter of opinion. The public chooses a single thing, and I think that's a very interesting phenomenon, because it inherently acknowledges the fact that there's value in scarcity. In other words, a composer might write a dozen fabulous somethings, but we only want the best one that we listen to. Well, anyway, that happened with Shostakovich's first violin concerto. It's great. Oistrakh recorded it. It's a stunner, and go enjoy it. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.